Leonard. 21 for Lou Williams off the bench. The Clippers win round one with the Lakers by 10.
You know, a lot of emotions, game one, but I'm just happy we came out and got a victory. We played a great practice the last week. Everybody competing, pushing everybody's limits, and we had some carryover tonight.
You don't always show your emotion, but what were some of those emotions that you were feeling leading up to this game?
I mean, like I said before, once I'm playing the game, I'm locked in, so I'm thinking about the next play. But before the game last night, it's a lot of emotions knowing that my family's going to be here tonight, and I'm just back here playing in the Staples in my hometown. It's just amazing.
You guys put together a great win. You did it without Paul George, and some of the best runs of the game were when you were resting on the bench. What do you think about the depth of this team and the potential?
I mean, you see what they did last year. They were the 8th seed, 7th seed playoff team. These guys fight. They fight hard every single night. And, you know, just because I'm here or Paul's here, we're not going to stop.
That is the sound of Kawhi Leonard speaking after his Los Angeles Clippers beat their city mates, the LA Lakers, by 112 points to 102 to open up the new NBA season last night. Joined on the line by the Ringer's John Gonzalez to talk this new season in the NBA. I remember we spoke about this time last year. It was either just after the start of the season or just before it, and we were discussing the machinations of LeBron's arrival to the Lakers and how he was trying to form that team in more of his own image. And one of the names that kept propping up from yourself was that of Kawhi Leonard. He went on to have quite the season for the Toronto Raptors, to say the least. John, he's now moved to the Clippers, to the surprise of some. Why was it that side of LA and not the purple and yellow?
Yeah, I think if we were asking LeBron in his most honest moment, he would much prefer if Kawhi Leonard was in his locker room and not the one down the hall. But I think Kawhi wanted to do his own thing, right? Because we saw how we've seen previously, multiple times, not just in this last NBA Finals, but previously when he was the MVP of a Finals with the Spurs, that Kawhi Leonard doesn't need to be the 1A or 2 option. He's the number 1 option. When he's on, when he's healthy, and when he's playing well, he's arguably the best player in the league. And we saw that in the Finals, and then we saw that on opening night. So I think for him, it was, I get to go to LA, I get to have my own team. They're already, as he mentioned, one of the deepest teams in the league. They don't even have Paul George back yet, and when they get him back, they're going to be that much better. So all signs are pointing up for Kawhi and the Clippers.
He seems to pick the right teams at the right time for somebody who's moved about the way he has.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was maybe a little trepidation when he got traded to Toronto. He wasn't sure what was going to happen there. Obviously, you know, he became a free agent, and there was always the threat that he could leave, and that's exactly what happened. But he makes players around him better. I mean, if you watch him for 2 seconds or an entire season, you're going to get the same notion that playing with him will improve the rest of the team. And you know, the Raptors last year were already a good team when he joined them. They became a great team. The Clippers, they were a good team last year, as he noted. I think they're going to be great this season with him.
Last night's game seemed to have more than, you know, a feeling of just a kind of opening night. There felt to be a bit of a sense of occasion, a bit of setting the table for what's to come over the course of the next few months in this season with last night's matchup. Is that fair to say?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think, you know, if you're talking about the center of the NBA universe right now, it's unquestionably Los Angeles. I mean, you have some of the biggest stars playing not just in the same city, but in the very same building where their locker rooms are just down the hall from each other. So that makes it interesting. And then also, you know, Los Angeles is a big city. In the offseason, in the NBA offseason, it really is the home of the entire league. Players from all around the league, from all around the country, end up staying here in the summer to work on their games, to play against each other and pick up games. And now what you're seeing is an extension of that. It's not just the offseason anymore. It's now also the regular season where LA is the epicenter. And that's going to continue all year long. So, yeah, it was a big night.
Yeah, seeing the role that the Lakers kind of play in that. We spoke last year about LeBron and the influence that obviously he brings, and they do have a deep enough roster of their own to call upon. But this seems like it's the season where the next generation are going to come up behind LeBron, which is, 35 now, I think, at this stage. It's going to be a case of, he's not stepping aside. I mean, that's not happening, but it's a case of who's lining up to be the guy to take over from him, and he's kind of got a job in his hands to kind of help that happen at the Lakers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of weird to think that the greatest player of his generation, bar none, and one of the greatest players of any generation in NBA history, still has something to prove in a way. Because I think obviously last year he moved to LA, he took over an iconic franchise. Everybody expected them immediately to vault into the playoffs. And then what we learned was, he wasn't exactly quite healthy. The pieces around him were bad. He's not Superman and can't completely will a team into the playoffs and into a championship all by himself anymore necessarily. And so he comes into the season where, hey, yeah, I mean, like, he still needs to reboot this franchise that he promised to revitalize. He's paired with Anthony Davis, who is not only his friend, but one of the best players in the NBA, and they have the same agent, and they orchestrated this thing. So this really does have to go right for him, and I think he desperately wants it to. And, it was only one game, but that's not a great start. It's certainly not the way he wanted to begin the season. And there's something for LeBron James to do this season, which we haven't said in a while.
Yeah, they haven't been helped by the fact that DeMarcus Cousins tore his ACL in pre-season as well. Do we have any time frame on how long he's going to be out for?
I'd be shocked if he comes back this year. It's possible that he's done, period. I mean, this is something that we've discussed at the Ringer and people who cover the NBA, where the injuries are starting to pile up on him. He's a big guy. He carries a lot of weight on that body, and between the injuries and the size that he plays at, you have to start wondering like how much he has left and whether or not he's going to be able to be even remotely healthy enough to step on the court again.
It would be a pity if that actually came to pass, though, wouldn't it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's an incredible player. I mean, when he's right and he's healthy, or even some semblance of it, he can do so many things on the floor, both inside and outside. He shoots, he protects the rim. He plays good defense. He rebounds. He can run a little bit, or he used to be able to. It would be a major bummer if we didn't have any more Boogie Cousins on the floor.
Absolutely. Speaking of that Pacific Division, because it's kind of stacked at the moment, especially in terms of what Golden State still, have a lot to offer. What kind of challenge are we expecting from them this season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we just found out that we obviously know that Kevin Durant is gone. But we just found out that Klay Thompson might not be returning. Steve Kerr said that they're not going to rush him back from the ACL injury, and it was his hunch that he probably wouldn't play at all this year, which puts the onus that much more on Steph Curry. You've got Draymond Green. They brought in D'Angelo Russell, but this is not the Golden State Warriors certainly not of the last couple of years when they were a monster mega team with, as you mentioned, Boogie Cousins and Kevin Durant, but even from the beginning of their runs, when it was just that core three of Draymond and Klay and Steph, now you take Klay out too, and you inserted D'Angelo Russell, who's a good player, but certainly not of the caliber defensively of a Klay Thompson, and probably not as good a dead-eye shooter either. So, yeah, in the same way that LeBron James and the Lakers oddly have something to prove, I'd say that Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors do too.
Steph Curry definitely has something to prove in the eyes of this man.
We go out there and represent greatness every single night.
So Steph Curry shouldn't be offended when he watches this?
I hope not. He's still a great player. Not a Hall of Famer yet, though. He's not.
Cheers.
Cheers, my friend.
That is the sound of a certain young man by the name of Michael Jordan. One or two people may have heard of him. He was speaking on the Today Show on NBC this week, John, a little bit tongue-in-cheek when talking about Steph Curry. Yeah. Craig Melvin, the presenter, the interviewer was talking to him there, has come out afterwards and says, listen, everybody in the room knows that he's taking the piss when he says that Steph Curry is not a Hall of Fame player. He quite clearly is. But I believe there are reasons why MJ couldn't necessarily come out and say that outright.
Yeah, I mean, I think MJ was having a little bit of fun with it there. And he definitely is somebody who loves to talk about his own legacy. When the conversation comes up about who's the greatest player in NBA history between, say, he and LeBron, he frequently picks himself, as you would expect somebody of Michael Jordan's caliber and competitiveness to do. So I think that was like a little bit of the same thing there. But clearly Steph Curry is a Hall of Famer. They
were mentioning on NBC subsequent to that he can't necessarily talk Steph up as much as he would like to because of an issue of tampering. Is that true or is it not? Because I know obviously he's got the Hornets connection.
I think the tampering, the NBA has definitely tried to crack down more on tampering, but as the rule on the books applies to conversations about other players, it's mostly about saying, you'd like to sign that player or secure that player when they become a free agent or trade for that player, which is verboten. But nobody stops from talking about it. I mean, like in every single pre-game scrum, when you're talking to coaches or other players and you say, hey, what do you think about LeBron James, or what do you think about Giannis, or what do you see from a Kyrie Irving? Everybody talks about everybody's game. So I don't think that it would be in violation of the spirit of the law to say, yes, of course, Steph Curry is a Hall of Famer.
Was Magic not done or fined by the NBA for a kind of similar infraction?
Yes, Magic has been fined many times over for many infractions, not the least of which is tampering. He got hit with a pretty big one last year. As you may recall,
50 grand or something,
Paul George. Yeah, he was on a talk show. I think it might have been Jimmy Kimmel. And he was asked, hey, what do you think about Paul George? And immediately, the trap was sprung. So, yeah, I think that's part of the reason why he had to get out of running the Lakers, because he kept writing checks to the league that he probably would have otherwise rather not.
I think that's one of the many reasons why he probably had to get out of the Lakers. There were several deep issues there, as far as I can make out, with Magic and what was going on in that organisation. Before we let you go, John, your overall sense of how this season's going to go, just from the teams that we've touched on, the fact that Kawhi has gone from the Raptors, it seems to be as much of a wide open season that we've seen in many years in the NBA.
Yeah, you and I and many of your colleagues have talked about this the last couple of years, where it was sort of a foregone conclusion that you knew the Golden State Warriors were going to march out of the Western Conference, and then in the Eastern Conference, who knew? And now we have a situation where I think the Clippers are the best and deepest team in the NBA, but as you mentioned, that Western Conference is absolutely stacked. You could see the seeding falling in any number of ways in the West, and then in the Eastern Conference, you've got the Bucks and the Sixers. I think is like clearly cut in that top tier, but then the rest of that group could be super interesting. So for the first time in many years, we've got a situation where who knows who's going to end up in the finals? Who knows who's going to eventually be the NBA champions? And I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun this year.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's good. Like, it's so exciting the way this is laid out. I mean, it could, especially in that Eastern Conference, like those chips could fall any number of ways over the course of the next few months.
Yeah, for sure. I'm, as you know, from Philadelphia, so keeping my fingers crossed for the Sixers. They play the Celtics tonight, which is a great way to kick off the season against one of their main rivals. And yeah, it's going to be a long season of where are we going to go from here? And the mystery is always the best part.
That's the thing. There's going to be a lot of heartache along the way, I think, as well, for a lot of teams. But John Gonzalez from Ringer, thanks so much for taking time out to speak to us this evening.
Always a pleasure.
All the best of the Sixers as well during the course of this season.